This is Screen Junkies Movie Fights, brought to you by Loot Crate. Now your host, Andy Signore.
Hello, Screen Junkies. I am not Andy Signore. Andy Signore is on a much well-deserved vacation for this week and next week, so we have an awesome guest host who you'll be surprised with next week. But I am hosting this week's Movie Fights. I'm Dan Murrell, and I'm happy to be here back in the judge's chair. I'm wielding Mjolnir. I've got the Bell of Justice here. I am ready to reign supreme here on Movie Fights. And I'm super happy to have this panel that's with me today. We're talking about some great stuff. What's the best movie of 2016 so far? What's the worst Steven Spielberg movie? What's the most underrated superhero movie in the last decade? That and so many more. The man to my left, Coy Jandreau, thank you for being here. You know him from one of the hosts of Marvel Movie News and my co-sidekick today on the Screen Junkies show.
Yeah, let's do it, man. That was exciting this morning. Yeah, that was crazy.
I was told by Ken Napzok, our producer, that you are actually currently undefeated in any Screen Junkies fight programming.
I am 4-0, 2 on TV fights, 1 movie games, 1 movie fights.
Wow, there you go.
I'm excited.
The two gentlemen looking to dethrone Coy from his undefeated reign. First of all, he's usually behind the engineer's console. He is in front of the mic today. You know him as JTE. It's JTE.
Yes, I left the booth hoping to enter the winner's circle today. I love beating people that are undefeated, so I'm like extra motivated to win.
I've never sat on the side. It feels intense, not gonna lie to you.
And as if that wasn't enough, you've seen him on Collider Heroes. You've seen him all over the internet. He's the leader of the Sweaties. It's Jon Schnepp.
What's up, everyone? I'm really honored to be sitting next to JMX right here, JZV, or whatever his name is. I cannot wait. You know, it's been fun. I always see you like at the Schmoes thing, and also sometimes rocking the engineering over here. So I think, and also I was on the Marvel thing with you and Matt Key.
Yeah.
Doctor Strange is what I like to call him. So
he's slowly turning into Doctor Strange. Like it's just manifesting on his
slowly. I
face.
was like, dude, every day you look a little bit more like actually comic book.
The collar comes up.
Yes, right. It's like, are you like putting starch in that? It's just like naturally raised.
It's mysticism, bro.
Well, happy to be back.
Thank you, John, for joining us. And as if this all-star panel isn't enough, since I'm sitting here in the judge's seat, fact-checking for us today, he's one of the writers of Honest Trailers. He's a rising star here at Screen Junkies. It's Joe Starr. I didn't even mean that, Joe. That's just happened.
You nailed it. Dan, I cannot think of a better Adam West to Burt Ward for. Let's check some facts and let's fight some movies.
We'll work on the catchphrase. Welcome, Joe. Thank you for coming today. So, guys, I know you're all Movie Fights veterans. Just a quick rule reminder. This show is about the arguments. It's not about what my favorite is. It's about what your answers are. It's about the facts presented. It's about passion, and it's about creativity. I don't have to tell you guys that. You already know that. This is an all-star panel. I wanted to make sure this is going to be a fun show since I am filling in for Andy. So we are going to throw down. But first, before we do that, I would like to say a quick thank you to our sponsor for this week, Loot Crate. Loot Crate, you know them. We love them. They're a frequent sponsor of the show. They are the coolest geek and gamer box around, a monthly subscription service where you can get epic geek and gamer items and pop culture gear delivered right to your door for less than $20 a month. You get 4 to 8 items every single month, licensed gear, apparel, collectibles, unique one-of-a-kind items. Joe Starr.
Yes, sir.
You have a Loot Crate over there, don't you?
I do.
Now, this is usually the time of the show where we show off what's in that Loot Crate, but you know what? We're not going to do it because this month's theme is futuristic. They have packed July's crate with items from some of pop culture's favorite predictions of science in the future. Franchises like Rick and Morty and Mega Man and Futurama, Star Trek, The Next Generation. Joe, don't open that crate. It's in the future.
It burned my retina stand.
It's in the future. It's futuristic, Joe. We can't open that crate. If you want to know what's in that crate, you have until July 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to subscribe and receive the futuristic crate, or guess what? You can be left in the past. The futuristic crate is going bye-bye. When that cutoff happens, it is over. Also, go get yourself some loot and help support us here at Screen Junkies. In the process, click the annotation to go to lootcrate.com/moviefights and save 10% off a new subscription by using the code MovieFights. So thank you, Loot Crate, and your future crate. Guys, you gotta, they're from the future, these items. We can't show them.
I thought when he was going to open it, like the glowing, like the Pulp
Yes.
Fiction.
We'll never know what it is.
Or his face melts, and we'll never know what's in the box.
Man, a car is going to come in here and take us away.
All right, Loot Crate, thank you very much. Gentlemen, are you ready to start this fight?
Let's do this.
Let's do it.
Now let's do this!
This is where we fight!
Fight! Fight!
Round 1. There we go.
There it is.
We just wanted to see like you were
Yeah.
always there, like you're behind, like usual, JT.
I like to judge a little bit one out here.
Guys, believe it or not, this past weekend, of course, was July 4th weekend, which, other than being Independence Day here in America, means that 2016 is officially halfway over. We're 6 months into the year, and I think it's pretty universally acknowledged this has been an up and down year for movies, maybe a little bit more so than usual. But Trevor Wood asked us, what is the best movie of the first half of 2016? So since January, the first 6 months of 2016, what's been the best movie coming out so far? Coy, we're going to start with you.
Well, I have a strong bias, and anyone that watches Marvel Movie News knows that I've been waiting 11 years for this film to exist, and without the film being as good as it was, they wouldn't make now, like, button-up, quasi-formal, awesome Deadpool shirts. That movie existing is not only a freak of nature, it actually, in my opinion, is a revolutionary film. I see that as the first film to truly accomplish the mythical R-rated superhero movie. It actually changed the perspective of cinema because we live in the age of superheroes. We live in a time where the biggest movies are all superhero based, but because of that time, the bubble of the superhero world is dangerously close to popping, and this movie gave it just a little extra life. I think this movie is original, it was different, it was low budget, it was arguably the best translation of a character that had no right to be translated to film that well. It was a movie that had all heart. Everyone involved in that film, you could tell, put their all into it, and it was the best interpretation we've had from Fox. It was the first time that I've seen another studio in the Marvel canon handle their characters that well, and I wouldn't change a thing about the movie, including the fact that it lost some of its budget and had to make some creative outlets, and I can't say it about any other movie. I wouldn't change a thing, and in my opinion, that is the mark of a good film, when you watch it and rewatch it and know that you love every aspect of it.
Chimichanga time for Coy.
All day.
JTE, what is your pick for best movie of the year so far?
Let me tell you about another movie I would not change a single frame or scene or music cue from, and that is, to me, the best film this year so far is Sing Street. This movie is cinema joy. And I say that as somebody who's a big fan of Rocky. When I feel like when you saw Rocky in the theater, you left that theater just fist pumping in the air. You just felt good about life. You felt good about cinema. That's how I felt when I came out of Sing Street. There's not many movies these days that let you feel that. That doesn't just capture the magic of what pure, like, good heartfelt cinema is. And I feel like in the cynical times where everything is kind of being torn down and, oh, this is how this works, even Deadpool, it's like deconstructing a superhero movie. This is an autobiographical film that takes place in the 80s about a kid. It's a very simple story, a kid who starts a band to impress a girl. But it is so much more than that. It is life lessons, and that's why I think it is the best film of the year.
There you go. Jon Schnepp,
Right
best
on.
movie of 2016 so
I just
far.
gotta just say, like, I'm looking forward to seeing Sing Street, like, with you and the other 17 people who saw it, because I think it was only in theaters for like a day. I remember everyone was like, "You gotta see this movie. It made me cry. It changed my life." I tried to see it. It was gone.
Yeah.
I literally went to like 25 different theaters. Like,
Barely anybody
desperately
saw
trying to see it.
Shawshank when it was in theaters,
Yeah.
and then went with The Whisper, and how we talk about that movie now.
I know, but that's in the future. You got to get
Yes.
that Loot Crate thing to talk about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right, so my pick is Captain America: Civil War, as far as like staying in the genre of superheroes for this first half of the year. Definitely Deadpool. I love Deadpool. I thought it was fantastic. It made up for Wolverine Origins in so many ways, and the shit that they did to Deadpool, that character. This movie itself, being an R-rated film, I loved it, but I went with Captain America: Civil War because it's the third movie in the trilogy so far of Captain America, and usually the third film isn't as good. I know a lot of people jump up and yell Return of the Jedi and this and that, but most of the time the third film in a trilogy doesn't do it, and for me this did it in spades. It was, I think, the best of the Captain America films. It also acts as like an Avengers 2.5. It introduces Spider-Man back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the best Spider-Man I've seen since Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. There's so much good to say about Civil War. I'll also say, like, I think the way they handled the villain was a really cool, different way of using a villain. It was using the villain as collateral damage, not as some kind of super-powered enemy. So for myself, I had a unique spin. It also pitted the Avengers against themselves, basically splitting them up and becoming a Secret Avengers story. So it really felt like another part or chapter in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but for me, one of the best superhero films yet, including being one of the best films of the year so far as just entertainment, what I got out of it, and let's just say Airport. That's the 17 minutes of pure cinematic, amazing joy that every single person, not only Marvel fans or comic book fans, but people in the audience just cheering out loud. It was incredible. So
you guys all made amazing cases, and I think everyone would agree that you picked three great movies. Box office hits, critical hits, all three of them. So, Coy, we'll start with you. We'll go to JT and then John. What is it that sets your pick, Deadpool, and of course Sing Street Civil War, above the other two? What makes yours the best movie of the year?
I feel like my film had all of the heart and importance, and in this case, in my film's case, it's a love story superhero film that I haven't seen Sing Street yet, but that might as well. It had the underdogness of a movie that shouldn't. It lasted a day in theater. Mine didn't last. 11 years it took to last, and then it broke every record. It broke regular records, broke R-rated records, and movie with that kind of legs, a movie that can last that long in theaters, that it doesn't drop 72% from weekend 1 to 2, shows that people not only loved it the first time, they loved it the second time. I thought the difference between Deadpool and Civil War was the fact that you had a movie that revolutionized the genre instead of being an evolution of the genre. I felt that Civil War evolved from where we already stood, and it gave us a new, brilliant perspective, but it was just evolving. It wasn't new. It didn't transcend the medium. When I watched Civil War, I loved it because I knew the characters, I was invested, and I thought it did brand new things, but it did things new from a place of understanding where we were. Deadpool had no ground to stand on before. In fact, it was told it didn't have the right to exist, and then it still was as good, if not better than Civil War, without any basis of foundation of people already enjoying it.
JTE.
Listen, both of these are very fun movies. If you ask the question, what's the most fun you had in the theater? I might say Deadpool, I might say Civil War. But the question, what's the best movie overall? And for me, it's Sing Street. First of all, Deadpool, yeah, it's a very generic plot. What really saves that movie is Ryan Reynolds' performance and them really breaking down what superhero movies are, which is cool, but it's not the first movie to do that. Kick-Ass did that. Even another film by James Gunn, Super, did that very well. Yes, you guys made more money than me. There's no doubt about that, okay? You are summer tentpole films, but there's such cogs in this Hollywood, comic book machine. Sing Street is a story that you could show to somebody 10 years from now and be like, that's just a universal story that anybody could pick up and understand, because we all grew up and we've all gone through life lessons that this character goes through with his brother, his family, and the girl that you love that you can't quite get. Now, Civil War is such part of a giant franchise. And I agree, it is really good, and that airport scene's great. But for me, I think most people will say Winter Soldier is actually the better movie in that trilogy. So for me, when I saw it, while I enjoyed the hell out of it, didn't quite live up to the last film for me. So it's like, yeah, it's good, but can I say it's the best of the year? No, because the one before it to me was better. And Deadpool, again, I think the sequels, I'm real curious to see where they go with the sequels of that movie, because the trick's kind of been done. It's out of the bag, and I don't know if they're going to be able to recapture it. I don't have to worry about Sing Street sequel. I will bet anything. I was going to say my car, but I don't have one. I would bet my car, my permit, my house, if I had one, that there's not going to be a Sing Street sequel.
So you're putting nothing up.
I'm putting nothing up.
Strongly putting
I
nothing
will put
up.
my Blu-ray collection, which is very large. Sing Street is such a universally well-told film, and the music. Anyone that goes watches that movie and buys the soundtrack immediately, you know what I'm talking about. So it breaks out. When you're in your car and you hear a song, you're automatically going to think of this movie because it's so tied into the film. And again, I always want to say both your films are very fun, but mine, I feel, get you on an emotional level just as much as like a fun level.
Okay. John, Civil War, why is it number one?
Well, I mean, like I said, once again, I gotta say I haven't seen Sing Street. Universally, no one saw it. So I mean, I want to see it, but it got amazing reviews. I'm glad you dug it and stuff like that. But like for Deadpool, like I gotta say the marketing of Deadpool was amazing, and that's one of the reasons it made so much money. But if you just put it, like, strip it away from the marketing and the cool posters and the really unique way that they sold the film and brought up that kind of excitement, and just watch it as a film next to Civil War, I think Civil War is a better made film. I think Deadpool, it really operates on three characters, and Civil War is juggling tons of different storylines, yet it also keeps the main storyline of not only Captain America but Iron Man, Tony Stark. So you have two characters with all these other juggling storylines, and also amazingly introduces Black Panther as a character that cuts through their own storyline. So it's a lot to handle, and I thought the writers did an incredible job, and then the directors took what was written and did an even more incredible job. So as a cinematic film, it wins for me as like the high point of cinema right now for me. Of all the films that came out, like I said, I can't talk about Sing Street because I haven't seen it. I do want to see it. I don't think, even though when I see it, that it will be mark me as much as Civil War did, because I came out of that movie beaming. It was one of the most enjoyable films I've seen this year.
All right, guys, I'm not leaning anyway. You've all made very good cases. So final closing remarks. Plead your case. Why your movie? Just like in particular, why yours over these two? Why is yours the singular the best?
I feel that in the superhero genre, it's a movie we know people are going to go see, and this movie did a better job of putting things in the film that other movies would not get away with. It had a love story that mattered. It was open to taking risks. It had a pegging scene. There was a scene where Ryan Reynolds got pegged and they went for it. That's not a thing you would typically see in a superhero film. I felt like the marketing had to make up for the lack of exposure for the character. This is a C-list character that doesn't have any opportunity to be seen, so the marketing was kind of like it's Winter Soldier and Captain America. We're invested in that movie because the characters we've already seen before. This movie's had 6 months of marketing that made up for 8 years of other superhero films existing in that universe. So I think that is a testament to how good the movie was, that not only did that marketing set that bar, but the movie was then higher than that bar because of the repeat viewings, because of how good it was, even after we were already over the novelty of him making fun of things. And I agree that the movie had that shtick going into it, and that's going to make a sequel difficult. But I think, once again, the testament to how well it did more than once shows that shtick isn't something that's going to die off. And if we're talking about how the film is a tried and true tradition, it's an origin story that has a almost Pulp Fiction like timeline that goes back and forth through time. I don't think that is as tried and true as other origin films. And if we're talking about like tradition, then the guy wanting to get his girl through music is I haven't seen the film, but that's as tried and true as it gets. That is the indie darling storyline. So I think that this movie did use the tropes like it was supposed to, but evolved beyond them, and that is what a good movie's supposed to be. If you're going to put your movie out as a summer blockbuster, somehow release it in February and make more money than a movie with Batman and Superman in the title, then the way to do it is by having heart and by having substance, and that was this movie, and it is the best movie of the year by far.
Let me say this. I think Deadpool is an incredible film, but the thing that separates it from something like Civil War is Deadpool's rated R and Civil War is not, so it crosses over to a bigger audience. I think Deadpool, I'm happy it was rated R, and it made me as a fan of the comic book and the character happy, but as far as just being able to cross over as a cinematic experience for an audience, it limits itself by its hard R, you know, so that's a thing that separates it for me, but not as far as a quality film. I just think the storytelling and the way that they were able to incorporate so many different characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Deadpool got a lot of them, like Colossus. They introduced a lot of other X-Men characters, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in full effect in Captain America: Civil War. Sing Street, I feel like it's like a lot of other stories I've heard. I've actually seen versions of Sing Street, even though I haven't seen that movie yet. I've seen it done a ton of times. I've never seen a superhero scene like that airport scene. 17 minutes of some of the best, most incredible superhero action that has ever been put to film. So that's another reason, on top of the crazy storytelling, on top of just the emotional impact that you have as you see that character, Steve Rogers, go through his first film. The second film, Winter Soldier, definitely is an incredible film. I just think Civil War edges out Winter Soldier a little bit, just for me, as far as a quality film of those films.
Sure, and I think that's a fantastic closing argument.
Yeah.
JTE, we're going to bring it to you, then I will make my ruling.
I'm going to say it again. These are great blockbuster films these guys pick. They're so much fun. For me, when I think of a great movie, the best movie of the year so far, I want great performances. The acting in Sing Street is phenomenal across the board. Even A Small World, Jack Rayner, who I only knew before this from Transformers, is phenomenal in this movie as the older brother who teaches his younger brother the life lessons, showing him the path that he didn't take. And for me, like Civil War, yeah, everyone's good in it. Yeah, Tom Holland had a small role, Spider-Man, but there's nothing in there where I was like, wow, that's in a performance. That's something I would put in my demo reel. And yes, Ryan Reynolds was great, but he's playing Deadpool, who's very one note, smart alecky kind of guy who's, he shows a little emotion with his girlfriend, but it's nothing we haven't seen before. And again, nothing I'm going to say, throw that on the demo reel for the end of the year Academy show where you're like, there's the highlights. This movie has great performances and new talent, people that we haven't really seen before. I knew almost none of the actors in this movie. And the director, this film, does a great job of getting great performances out of them. These kids are like someone you just see on the street. You're like, oh, I feel like I know somebody like this. So that's why it made it so relatable. And yes, it is a tired and kind of told story of, the kid trying to get the girl. But when you could do it new and fresh and make me feel like it's the first time I saw it, then that really says something about how good your film is.
I can't wait for the rest of America to see it.
So. Me either. Maybe Oscar time.
All right. While I'm looking at my notes, and I made several because this is a very close battle. Joe, anything you need to correct? And also, did we put a poll out on this?
We did put a poll out.
I don't want to know who won. I'm just curious to see if we put it out.
Yep, no spoilers on that, but it was a two-horse race.
Shocking.
Very, very shocking. Not really a lot of facts to correct here. Twitter chimed in. They love Jungle Book. They love Zootopia. And a lot of people wanted to live deliciously with The Witch. And
Black Phillip.
I wish I had been there with JTE getting out of the theater after he saw Rocky in 1976.
I'm saying, this is what it must have felt like. That's what I thought when I left the theater. I was like, wow, this must have felt like.
Fact-checking JTE's age.
Yeah.
The roaring
77.
70s with
I'm a
JTE.
Highlander.
So I'm going to put my cards on the table here. I think that, Coy, you made a great argument as to why Deadpool was revolutionary to the comic book genre and why it was a really enjoyable film that did a lot of stuff within that genre, but I didn't hear as much about why necessarily it was the best movie of the year, just more about why it was so revolutionary for that genre of film. So for me, it's between Jon and JTE, and this is really super close. And I have to say, it's almost 50-50 for me.
Wow.
I think what puts me over is JTE. Toward the end there, you kind of admitted I think it was a bit of a misstatement. You said it's a bit of a tired and an old story, and I think that was a bit of a misstep. I was looking for something that would lean me either way, so that kind of tipped me over to Jon's side, so Jon gets the point for round one. 3 great movies, though, by the way. If you haven't seen any of those 3.
And I'm not joking. I want to see. I did try to. Not making it up. I'm trying to see Sing Street.
I know it's just one comment, JT,
Yeah.
but it was so close. It was so close.
I was hoping the performance would tilt this way.
Yeah,
but
and
it's
anybody
okay.
that watches anything on
Yeah.
ScreenJunkies knows where I stand on that. But yeah, it's about the arguments.
I understand.
Joe, between Deadpool and Civil War, what was the winner of the audience vote?
Well, Deadpool has the winning logo checkmark on the poll, but Captain America has more numbers, so we're having a Florida situation. On
Well, the check mark just means that's the one you voted for. So.
Oh, fantastic.
So
I voted Deadpool,
right?
as I just admitted to you, but
Yep.
Captain America Civil War ran away with the poll.
Wow.
Ran away, really? What were the
Yeah.
percentages there?
48 to 41%.
48-41. All right.
17%
Poor Sing Street at I don't know.
Or 11%.
Yeah,
Sing
11%.
Street. Although Twitter agrees with Schnepp, they really want to see it.
There you go. Go see it.
broad
It's coming out on.
audience.
Yeah, good.
It's
Maybe.
very soon going to be on digital
Blu-ray.
HD and Blu-ray. And
Oh,
you
good.
Check it out because it's really worth seeing. All right, guys. Round 2. This has been the talk of that was our subject for Screen Junkies show this week. It's kind of been the talk for the last week. The Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition was released last week. First of all, have you guys all seen it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The buzz and everyone I think is generally agreed that it definitely makes some improvements on the
Yes.
theater.
It changed my mind. Like, I'd seen the theatrical cut twice, and the first time I gave it a 7. The second time I saw it, I gave it a 6.5. It just kept sucking more the more, and I was like, I can't see it ever again.
Uh-huh.
This Ultimate Edition comes out. I saw it in the theater, and it changed my mind. I actually liked it. And it's amazing how 30 minutes, but it's not just 30 minutes. They rearranged entire sequences.
Yeah.
And it's not a 30-minute chunk. It's like little scenes here and there,
Yeah.
little lines that they put back in. It just made me care about the characters, and I didn't care about them when I saw it theatrically. And then this newer, longer version, I cared about Clark Kent.
Yeah, Clark Kent was in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sacrifice that he makes. So it really made me change my opinion.
So with that Ultimate Edition, it's turning a lot of people around a little bit more positive on Batman v Superman than the theatrical version. Curious George asked us, not the monkey, but the person, not the actual person either. I'm sure that's a nom de plume. Wanted
Weird
to
if it was
know
really his name.
what is the most underrated superhero movie of the past decade. So the last 10 years, looking at it, and there's been a bunch of superhero movies. Which one is the most underrated that has found over time a little bit more of a following? JTE, we're going to start with you.
This was tough. A lot of the movies and comic books are so popular right now, and most of the movies are done well, and if they're bad, they're really bad. So it's hard to find out one that's right in the middle that you think is really good, but didn't quite get the attention it deserved. I went with Hellboy 2, The Golden Army. Del Toro's sequel to Hellboy, which I think improves on the first film in almost every way. The first time I saw Hellboy, The Golden Army, I felt like I walked out of like an early Tim Burton film. It's like Del Toro had all these restraints in maybe some of his older films that he was just able to let loose. It was like a kid in a playground just building out of these sandcastles of everything he wants to make. And the creature effects are so practical for the most part that it looks beautiful. And the cinematography is unbelievable. Not to mention the story is really cool and original, something... That's the problem with some of these superhero movies these days. Everything kind of has a little bit of a genre feel to it. Beginning, middle, end. Oh, what's the big beam at the end of this movie? What are they trying to destroy? This movie felt so different. And to me, that's what really kind of stood out from most comic book movies. And I feel like it doesn't get attention it deserves. When people mention some of the best comic book movies in the past 20 years, I'll throw Hellboy 2 into that mix. I don't feel like enough people do.
There you go. John.
Yeah, I picked Kick-Ass. I mean, I think Matthew Vaughn's adaptation of Mark Millar and John Romita Jr.'s story of Kick-Ass was... I love the comic book, and to see the adaptation done so well, It not only introduced Hit Girl, but also introduced Big Daddy, played by Nick Cage. And I thought him doing that Adam West accent just put it over for me as far as that part. But also I really like the idea of like a more grounded and realistic look at like, hey, if you were actually going to try to be a superhero, how hard it would be. It would literally, you're going to possibly die. So I remember when I saw the film, I had already seen the comic, and I really liked the way that Matthew Vaughn directed it. I liked the story. I liked everything about it, and it felt original and unique and special, especially with all the superhero films, the glut of films that we've been seeing. It makes it a lot easier now to be like, I'm not so sure about this or that. And that came out roughly right around the time when the superhero films were really kicking off, and I thought it was an original take.
Coy.
Mine is a tricky one because it is regarded very highly, but I still think as highly as it's regarded, it is still underrated. I think Iron Man 1 is a very underrated film. People talk about the Avengers, people talk about Winter Soldier, people talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, but they never include Iron Man 1 in the conversation for the best superhero movie of all time. And I think that this is a movie that literally changed cinema forever. I'm putting this with Shawshank. I'm putting it with Citizen Kane because we live in an era of film that exists because of this movie. And this is a movie that hired a guy that just got out of rehab, that was just fired off a show, that was directed by a man who'd only done smaller budget things. This was a movie by a studio that was practically an indie studio because no one had trusted them. And they made a movie that literally changed the way we see movie going. They made a movie that starred a C-list character starring an actor that had washed up with a director, like I said, that hadn't done a lot, and they invested a lot of money to make it right. And this is a movie that you can revisit almost a decade later. The CGI still holds up. The world building still holds up. The characters still hold up. It birthed us Tony Stark, which is the foundation for a guy making like $70 million a movie. This is a movie that started an entire enterprise that made itself so large and important that Disney bought it and became one of the biggest franchises in the world. This is a thing that without, we could not have the superhero boom we have today, and without the movie being as good as it was, we wouldn't be having the conversations about any of these films. This movie allowed the age we live in now to exist, and it was so risky because of everything involved.
JTE, I see you guys like you're chomping at the bit over there, guys.
Chomp a little longer. Chomp first. All I can say is I agree with everything you said, but that doesn't mean it's not underrated. Yeah. All of us, I've said that just last week on my own show. Like, I think Iron Man is the one of the granddaddy that started off everything. I don't understand where you're coming with.
I think people see it as a lower tier than the Winter Soldier, than the Avenger.
All right,
but I think we're unique in that people don't bring it up in conversation
It's still
anymore.
the best Iron Man movie. Like,
no, that's not hard to do, though.
Every Iron Man movie since that with Robert Downey Jr. has not been as good as the first. Everyone always says that when they see 2 and they saw 3. So listen, some people like 3, but that was a little divided. Most people did not like 2. Everyone is like, why can't it be as good as the first one? To me,
that's why they're bringing Favreau back.
The 3. Yeah, so it's like you made a great pitch for movie best comic book to start a franchise,
right,
or a MCU. But I mean, Christian Bale was a nobody, and he did Batman Begins. And that film was huge.
He already done American Psycho. He was already a newsie.
Spider-Man 1 and 2 were huge for comic book movies, and let's not forget Bryan Singer's X-Men, which really, to me, is what started it all.
Actually, Blade really started it all. Let's not get really excited about it.
Blade's. But
nobody
X-Men
even
was
knew
like
Blade
the next
was a comic
tier.
book.
Yeah, they just
That's the
like,
problem.
Bloodgrave was cool.
That was cool. We all remember that moment.
I mean, and again, this was Marvel's first film. I think they got Robert Downey Jr. and Jon Favreau because they probably couldn't afford the best director or the best actor. They were a studio that was starting up. They had to do it their own way.
That's what I'm saying. That's why it's underrated. This is not a conversation about
it was a
being
huge
regarded
hit.
as a huge hit. But both of these films are huge hits in their own subcategory.
You're starting
Joe, I'm gonna go to you for some figures later, just so you know.
I've never heard of it as underrated. That's why when I was like, I want to hear your argument, but I haven't heard it like as.
I just don't feel like it's regarded.
Facts,
right. I just don't feel like it's regarded in the same top number 1 tier as the other films in the genre, like Winter Soldier, like you were just saying, Civil War. I don't think it gets enough love and conversation for what it did for everything, not just for superhero movies, but for cinema.
I'll definitely agree. Hellboy 2 is underrated. It's underrated because it's not as good of a film.
No, it's better than the first.
No, it is better than the first one. I like that they introduced the BPRD, and I loved elements of it. I love the design sensibility of Guillermo. I love that he puts all this work into the designs of the monsters, but unfortunately the storytelling aspect of Hellboy kind of is all over the place. And for myself, it falls. I know you do, but
I know. I'm sorry.
That's what I'm saying. You have the right to be wrong. I'm just telling you why you're wrong.
Gotcha. I hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, for myself, when I was watching the film, I loved the way it introed all the characters, but then once they kind of split off and went to that monster island, went in, talked to the weird multi-eyed creature. I can't remember what he's called. I was like, all right, there's the Golden Army, there's that weird city under the ground, there's the people with the weird white skin who are super cool and kind of matrixy, but it didn't really know where it wanted to go. So for myself, Kick-Ass actually is a storyline that has a through line from beginning all the way to the end. They introduce all the characters properly. You don't know really what's going to happen. You don't know who's going to live or die. In fact, Big Daddy dies. It's characters are at risk, and I felt like the chances and the risk that they took with something like Kick-Ass, they could definitely do, because it wasn't an Iron Man or a Spider-Man. They could take risks like that, and they're adapting a very hardcore comic book. Mark Millar is known for taking those kind of risks in comic books. I think Matthew Vaughn's known as taking those risks as a director in film. So for myself, that's why I think it's underrated. It didn't make a lot of money at the box office. It barely made enough to warrant a sequel, and the sequel wasn't as good as the first one. So, but I stick to Kick-Ass.
Yeah, JT, we've heard some strong arguments against Iron Man, and then we've heard some strong arguments against Hellboy 2. JTE, do you have a take on Kick-Ass?
Here's my problem with Kick-Ass was it promised you one movie, and then halfway it kind of abandoned that. Like, I was really into, for the first half, Kick-Ass, because you're seeing what is it like to see superheroes in the real world. But then by the third act of that movie, it just goes full-on comic booky, with him literally flying on a jetpack through the city with music blaring, very John Williams-esque, by the way. So for me, it kind of like the movie showed you what it was going to be and said, nah, we're going to chicken out a little bit and just reform to what comic movies are. And then, like you mentioned, the sequel is not very good, which I think shows you the material is not that great. It's to who's handling the material. I think Matthew Vaughn was just a great director, and he was able to make it his own and make it a very entertaining film. But I think everyone I know that likes the first Kick-Ass, they talk about it. I go to cons, there's hit girls everywhere. I don't see anybody dressed up as anybody from Hellboy 2, and I think it's not because
those robots are pretty hard to make.
That's a lot of money.
You can do some cool stuff with Hellboy 2. There's so many costumes in that movie. All I'm saying is I think Hellboy 2, it did okay in theaters, okay? It didn't make enough money to grant a sequel.
Actually it did pretty well. It did 160 million.
It did decent. Like a world, but for some reason it didn't make enough to get a sequel, and it just kind of got forgotten. It's like no one ever brings up Hellboy when they talk about comic movies anymore. It's not like this forgotten stepchild that just never gets mentioned at the family barbecue.
I gotta say, I disagree. They did bring up Hellboy for many years,
and they talked about it recently for Hellboy 3.
But the reason it's not getting made is because Guillermo wants like $250 million, and they're like, "Look, dude, we'll give you 80," and he said, "No, I have to have hell on earth." It's like he's got these ideas that are just too big.
The reason people are excited about it is because it was so good that they want a sequel. After Kick-Ass 2, I don't want to see another Kick-Ass
in defense
ever.
of my stance on Iron Man.
If you could take 2 back, I'd be happy. 2 is so bad.
I know, I'm talking about Kick-Ass, the first one.
So let's disregard the first, second Kick-Ass 2.
You're kind of ruining your argument.
I'm making the fact like people like Kick-Ass and they want a sequel and they got it.
Right.
It wasn't good, so therefore maybe the movie material wasn't good enough to conquer a sequel.
My stance on Iron Man is that I think, like you're saying, it is regarded very highly. It is a conversation that's had. There's a conversation that's had as a movie that is really good and that was better than Iron Man 2 and 3, but it's not regarded as a movie that is considered as good as Winter Soldier or as good. I'm saying it's a movie that's considered like a B+. I'm saying it should be considered an A+, and I'm saying that Iron Man before the movie was a C-list character like Kick-Ass or like Hellboy. It is not a character that was regarded. If either of your movies turned into billion-dollar franchises, that would be a different story.
Well,
Mine is the winner of underrated because this thing caused characters like yours to become a franchise that's changing lives.
You're comparing it to like the Avengers and Avengers 2.0 and all these meet of all these superheroes. The first Captain America and Thor are look as not successful when compared to Iron Man because it's such a big film that set the standard so high.
Iron Man has gotten great reviews. It's not underrated in the fan community. Everyone no one knew what Iron Man was before the movie came out, and that's why it put everything on the map.
So you guys have hit Iron Man pretty hard. I think I can see where you guys are coming from. Coy, you really stuck up for it. I definitely can see where you're coming from. JT and John, just very quickly, some final words on Hellboy 2 and Kick-Ass. Why do you think it's the most underrated? Apart from sequels and everything else, why that movie in particular you think is the most underrated by people?
I'll go first. Like, if I was going to just say, screw off all the rest of the films on the planet, it was just Hellboy and Kick-Ass as far as, like, those are the only superhero films that were made. They are both underrated. But why I prefer Kick-Ass over Hellboy 2 is it's a more relatable storyline. I'm not a demon with a giant weird arm from hell, and I'm not trying to stop Satan and a bunch of other creatures. I related more to the ability, like, when you read comics, or, like, you look up to a character like Captain America, you're like, you imagine, like, what would it be like to be those characters? And then you see this one character, and boy, all of a sudden he's trying to do something in this world. He puts on a weird costume because he got hit by a car and he doesn't feel pain anymore. And other people start to imitate him. Just like a lot of superheroes, their rogues gallery are made up of people who are imitating them. He got imitators in the same movie. It does go superhero-y at the end, but that was always its intention. If you read the comics, it goes superhero-y, but just in a different way in the comic books. I felt it kept its tone from the beginning all the way to the end, and it is a really great film. It is underrated in that it barely got a sequel, and that sequel wasn't as good. But unfortunately, not enough people talk about Kick-Ass. You're right, there are hit girl, like at conventions, like a lot older ladies dress up as hot hit girls. But I mean, yeah, that's why I'll stick with Kick-Ass.
There you go. And to close this out, JT.
Yeah, for me, Kick-Ass, like I said, the premise just didn't promise what it was trying to sell you. I think I mentioned it earlier. James Gunn's Super was a much better version of what I think Kick-Ass was trying to be. And I think the reason why it's underappreciated, it should be underappreciated. It shouldn't be that well beloved or talked about because it didn't really pull off what it was trying to do as being like a send-up of comic movies and what comic book heroes would be like in real life, because
You're so wrong.
It jumped the shark in the third act and became a straight up superhero movie. Hellboy 2, it's one of the most beautiful looking films, and yes, it didn't make a decent amount of money, not enough to get his third, but it showed you that a lot of people that actually went and saw this movie really liked it. And I think on its own, you don't even need to watch the first Hellboy.
Let me retort
and you can just
really
go
quickly.
right into Hellboy 2 and
10 seconds.
like it just as much.
Retort really quickly. You said the Kick-Ass ending was went overboard. I think the Hellboy 2 ending with the 5,000
The
Scarab
movie is
Golden
about-
Army, it was way overboard and it did not come to a good ending.
Your movie-
they introduced the BPRD and then they forgot about it.
Your movie sets a standard of what happens in the real world, then it gets ridiculous. Mine is about a kid who's born from hell and comes to Earth. It's going to get ridiculous.
Okay. Woo! A lot of passion on that subject. Joe, before I make my ruling, any cleanup over there?
You know, everything was pretty accurate. Iron Man, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, box office of $585 million. Schnepp was right on with his numbers, $160 million at the box office for Hellboy 2. So yeah, everything was pretty clean and above the belt in this fight. As far as underrated superhero films, Twitter chimed in. A lot of people voting The Wolverine, Dredd, and a lot of love for Iron Man 3. So
Dredd is awesome. It's
Dredd's
underrated.
Dredd is great.
Dredd was my second choice.
I almost feel like that's a highly rated one, though. Like, it'd be
It's
hard
a
to
cult
argue.
following.
Yeah,
It's
it's a
a
very
great-
big
No,
following.
it just didn't make any money, but everybody who sees
Yeah.
it loves it.
Yeah, it's a 100% love for
yeah.
everyone that's seen it.
Coy, I respect your opinion on Iron Man, but I just can't go. I mean, your main thing was that like people say that it's not, but I've heard people say that it is
the
up there
best.
with some of Marvel's best. So
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying as far as like that it did set the stage, but I can't quite buy that it's underrated because I feel like, because you're so passionate, you're able to defend it for all those reasons that I think a lot of people
Grandmas know about
give it.
Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly.
But it didn't make
So-
1.2 billion Avengers did was my leverage, but it's not
That's
enough.
the Avengers.
It's between John and JTE, and of the two of you, I'm going to go with JTE. I think that, John, you even a little bit agreed that Hellboy is a little bit underrated. I definitely heard what you're saying about, Kick-Ass and barely got a sequel and that, but I think JT hit you a little bit with like Super was a better version of it. The fact that, the ending, it might have been a little messy. I get your issues with Golden Army's ending as well, but I think JTE made the better argument about why his was underrated, so JTE gets the point.
I love all three of these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
me
though
too. I love all
Iron Man's underrated, but I love it.
All right, round 3.
It was a bold choice.
Yeah. It was bold.
Illumination Entertainment, the people that brought us the Minions and Despicable Me's 1 and 2, are back in theaters this weekend with The Secret Life of Pets. I was just reading, it looks like it's going to open huge, $80 million plus this
Yeah.
weekend, new animated movie.
Wow.
Lauren on Twitter asked us, who do you think, in honor of Secret Life of Pets, is the best cinematic talking animal of all time? I'm very much looking forward to this debate. John, we're going to start with you.
Well, I picked Charlotte's Web, the 1973 version. And,
With Paul Lynde? Oh.
Yes, with Paul Lynde.
Oh, Charlotte.
I remember seeing that as a kid, and it really moved me. And it was because Charlotte was kind of teaching the little pig about life, and everybody dies. Everybody. It's an emotional journey that you go through, and as far as it's something I'll never forget.
Yeah, animated Charlotte's Web. That was my elementary school. That was the rainy day movie in elementary school was Charlotte's Web. Coy.
I picked Chance from Homeward Bound, because Chance from Homeward Bound was everyone's favorite talking animal growing up. Anyone that watched Homeward Bound identified so much with Michael J. Fox as this lovable dog that was a little too eager, a little too excitable. There was an ensemble cast of Sassy the cat, there was Shadow the wise old dog, and there was Chance, who just gave it his all, whose entire message was that it's okay to be a little crazy and weird as long as you got a good heart. And Shadow was always kind of judging him, and Sassy was sassy, and I felt like he just shone in this ensemble cast, and they didn't need to do anything except for have Michael J. Fox just being the most adorable dog in the world, and I cared about every time he smelled a skunk, every time he got stabbed in the face by a porcupine. This was a dog with heart, and he made me have heart, and he made me want to adventure, and he made me love my home so much more and appreciate my family, because it was worth that journey to be homeward bound.
JTE, what is your pick?
Homeward Bound, The Journey Home sequel.
All day.
Not. I went with a more recent one, actually. I'm going with Caesar from Rise and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I think, first of all, let's get over the fact that I have the most technical, best version of a talking animal. Here you have a cartoon. Here you have your dog's lips doesn't even move. It's just it's Milo and Otis style. There's just a voice going over from God. You get with my character. I want to save something for the fight, but you got Andy Serkis doing motion capture. So you feel for him and you actually see the emotions. When he says things, there's impact. There's a huge impact, not only to the story, but to the character. And to me, I think that's what makes him the best talking animal, because it's more about how it fits into the story than it is just a gimmick to have fun with, like your guys' movies.
I love how seriously we're all taking this. This is amazing. John, what are your thoughts? Stick up for Charlotte, attacks Chance and Caesar, your choice here.
You know, I think using Caesar, that's like a remote controlled, like it's like Andy Serkis and like 5,000 technicians. Like, you know, Charlotte's Web is animated like one key animator. I don't know if you know about how animation is done.
Yeah,
but like
it's a guy in a booth talking to a microphone.
Yeah, that's how it's done. And then all the other people who actually animate the thing don't count, but like they do. So I mean, like for Charlotte's Web, it's a little tiny spider. Debbie Reynolds played played Charlotte and had a very beautiful voice, and I think taught Wilbur the pig about life. And when she died and the three little spiders came and hung out with him at the end, it shows you it's like the circle of life is complete, even on like a horrible farm where animals are murdered. It's a lesson that teaches you as a young kid, and that's for myself why I picked it. It's like when you take your family, like families are showing their little kids Charlotte Webbs, and it teaches them something. It teaches them life lessons, and that's a kind of a cool thing when you come away with, like, I think Caesar, it's a violence and apes killing man, and it's a cool story. It's science fiction, but as far as that's why for me it's more of a science fiction story, less even about animation.
Yeah.
So.
To me, I feel like a talking animal movie is supposed to be, you're supposed to identify with the animal in some way, and you're supposed to, it's a surrogate for a person, and there's a reason they use an animal. So, but the reason I think that they use a surrogate, in this case, the bulldog, is because this is the most lovable creature in the world, as voiced by Michael J. Fox, and you get so much out of this characterization that you wouldn't get if it was just a person. You wouldn't get if it was a little boy. You get so much from this team of animals that are acting together and going in this adventure that you wouldn't get from any other animal. There's no other world where you have this identity with Michael J. Fox, and I feel like with Caesar you don't necessarily empathize. You do at points, but he is at the end of the day the villain, and he is CGI, and he's on the line of the uncanny valley where you're not really sure if you identify and trust with them, and that's not an animal that I want to be. I don't consider that the best animal. Charlotte absolutely is a character that taught us life lessons, but in my opinion, I'd rather have the life lesson be taught by the animal be something that I identify with in a positive light, and it's absolutely a good life lesson and very important. But when I watch an animal going through this adventure, I want to be happy, I want to be uplifted, and this is certainly that for me.
JT, come on. We haven't heard a lot about Caesar. What's going on with Caesar there?
First of all, for me, Caesar is a great character. I think he's a great character, which... When I think of Charlotte's Web, I think more about Wilbur the pig than I ever do Scarlet. She's just kind of like this thing hanging over the movie.
It's called Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web, sorry. That's how much I remember her. She's just kind of hanging over the movie, pun intended, because she's a spider. But
you didn't see the movie recently, have you?
Listen, I've seen it before, and what I remember...
It's called Charlotte's Web, I'm trying to remind you about.
But what I remember about it is all the other animals on the farm. I barely remember her. She's just kind of there.
She's in a lot of it, the movie.
She's in a good amount, I agree.
I'm just trying to...
But I'm just
before
saying,
you keep embarrassing yourself, what you remember or not.
Caesar... for me, when he actually said something, it meant something to the story. It was a huge moment. I'll never forget when I saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes, when he yells no to the Harry Potter kid who's abusing all the apes. The whole theater went silent. It was just kind of like, holy
James Franco?
crap. No, the kid.
Harry Potter.
I
James
believe you're speaking
Franco.
of
yeah, what's that
Tom
kid's name?
Felton,
Tom
Draco
Felton, yes.
Malfoy.
And again, now he does. What I love about it is he speaks a little bit just when it's really important to the story. It's not a gimmick. It's not something for kids to be like, oh my god, a cute animal's talking. I'm going to pay attention to this. Homeward Bound is a fine movie for kids, but best talking. Half the people, if you go on the street, won't even know what Homeward Bound is this generation. That's such an old film that I feel like you can't even go buy that at Best Buy right now. You cannot find that on Bluray.
Can we look up Best Buy?
Joe
please?
Starr,
Look up
can you
Best
please
Buy.
look up
You tell me
if you can
find
look up Homeward Bound on Blu-ray?
And if it is, I guarantee they got a lot of copies. But I just feel like for my character, if you're going to, not what is the best movie, but what is the best character that speaks, is the one that is more integral to the story. And I think Caesar, the fact that he could talk is what the whole Planet of the Apes is about. He became smart enough. And every time he does speak English in those two movies, it is for a reason, and it is impactful to the story.
Okay, Coy, I want you to stick up for Chance here. Tell me why he's the best character. So we're going to kind of bring this into a close. Tell me why Chance is the best character, why he's the best talking animal.
I feel like Chance is the best character because not only do you identify with him, but he has the most to do and say. He goes through an actual character arc throughout the film. He goes from reckless abandon to the dog that doesn't quite listen to actually understanding what obedience is through this journey. Shadow, his mentor / grumpy older dog, teaches him on this journey what it's like to be responsible. So you're still, as a child, being like, oh, I identify with this dog, but now I understand why my parents won't let me have 8 jars of peanut butter before bed. You start to understand what it means to grow up, but you're not feeling judged. You're not feeling judgmental. You're actually growing as a person while you watch the film. As you watch this dog grow from puppy to dog, it transcends the medium because it's something you remember. And when I think of Charlotte's Web, I think of the animal dying, that's all I remember. When I think of Caesar, all I think of is the enemy. All I think of is negative. All I think of is I want to grow with a creature. I want to experience an arc, and I do with Chance because that dog's awesome.
John, make the case for Charlotte. Why is Charlotte better than these two?
Let me just say, I mean, Spot is a cool character, but it's in no way, shape, or form close to Charlotte's Web. The beauty and storytelling power of Charlotte's Web. If all you think about is the death of the character, you got to see it again because you didn't see the actual film. It's not about Charlotte's death. It's about her life and what she tells Wilbur and imbues upon him. All the storyline. It's a journey, like you said. Any of these stories, like it's to honor Secret Life of Pets. That's why the Planet of the Apes thing. It's not even part of the story. I know you can pick Caesar, but it's not. For me, at least, it's weird.
It doesn't have to do with a kids movie. It doesn't have to be a kids movie.
I'm not saying it has to be a kids movie. It has to be about something that's more important than just like war and violence. At least to me.
That's some of the most important things in the world.
Oh well, okay. Well, at least for me, it's about the journey. So the story of Charlotte's journey and how she becomes. At least when she first meets Wilbur, she's away and she's by herself and not very communicative. It's both of them feeding off of each other, how they become friends and how she opens up and helps him not be afraid and not be filled with so much anxiety. Those are the things I take away from seeing it as a little kid and seeing it again as an adult. I don't have problems with the Planet of the Apes movies. I love all of the Planet of the Apes movies, maybe except for Battle of the Planet of the Apes movie and the Tim Burton one. We can forget about those.
Mark's Planet of the Apes.
I think Caesar's a great character. He's just not the best animal. So.
JT.
My thing is, he's not just some ape who's yelling, kill humans, I want to kill everybody. He's not like just somebody that is a bad guy. The fact the first hour of the first movie, he doesn't. You get to learn ape just through facial expressions, and then when he finally does say something, it hits home because you're like, oh my god, now this guy who was handcuffed throughout the whole movie because he couldn't communicate except for like with hand language with Franco and his girlfriend nurse. When he finally is able to talk, and this carries on to the second film, because again, he doesn't like hate humans because he was raised by a human. So when he actually meets, I can't remember the actor's name, the second one, Jason Clarke. When he actually meets him, like there's this great thing where he tells him at the very end of the movie when he realizes there's no longer can there be peace between humans and apes. There's that moment where he puts his head and he's like, we tried. We tried, and it's not going to work. And for me, it's like that is the most important thing because this guy's actually able to say something and mean something. Charlotte's Web, I understand. I haven't seen it in a long time. I think she's fine, but I have a problem giving this award to somebody who's just in a booth and it's animation. I think it has to be more than that.
It's an interesting tack to take considering your guys' mocap. That's an interesting...
He just invalidated what he's talking about. It's Andy Serkis is in a booth with like a bunch of dots all over his head.
Which is why I think makes it better.
Okay. Joe Starr, first of all, if you have it up, who won the last? I think I forgot to ask. Who won the poll in the last round? Do we know?
I don't have it up in front of me anymore, but
we can look it up later.
I think Kick-Ass probably
Kick-Ass
won.
probably. So I'm sure we have a poll up here. Any corrections, revisions, anything on your end for this round?
Homeward Bound is not available on Blu-ray, but it is available in a bundle on BestBuy.com on DVD with Homeward Bound 2 Lost in San Francisco and VOD on Amazon.com. And isn't that the future?
That's true.
Everything's
It's in the Loot Crate box.
It's in our futuristic Loot Crate. Yes, exactly.
It's in there.
Homeward Bound 3? You should have.
Dan, no real facts to correct here. I'm in a fight in my own heart with the entire cast of the Disney animated Robin Hood. Mm-hmm. A lot of love on Twitter for a donkey from Shrek. Mm-hmm. A lot of excitement for Kevin Spacey's eventual performance in Nine Lives.
Yes.
Let's see here. Tom at Road Raider 3 said, "Wow, I don't think I've ever seen Homeward Bound brought up on Movie Fights Live. Love it. Big movie from my childhood." Mm-hmm. And Curious George, the man himself who gave us this question, went with the Velociraptor from Jurassic Park 3.
Alan.
Now we know it.
One-line performance. Alan.
One line, but it spoke volumes. Curious George, that was a long way to go to make a Jurassic Park 3 reference. I applaud you, sir.
He jokeceptioned us just to get that joke out of the show.
JTE 3, no less.
Okay, this was tough. I guess I have to do, since Andy's here, that's contractually obligated to do that at least once. This is tough. JTE, I hear what you're saying. You made a great argument as to why Caesar had the most impact to the story, to the film that he was in, why he may have been the most impactful animal, but it didn't quite resonate as to why it was the best talking animal.
Gotcha.
So I think you made a great argument for his character, but it just didn't quite. The other two I thought were, you Coy and John, you both took a better tack for the animal angle, and I think it's what we're getting to, talking animal. Mm-hmm. And I think if I'm breaking it down to there, I think Coy kind of made a better point as to why his was the stronger animal. Wow. You found as a dog, he had a more character arc as an animal. He learned more about being a dog and more animal. This is a ridiculous round. I have to make a judgment.
That's right. Someone must lose.
I'm leaning. I had to lean towards Coy. John, you almost had me with Charlotte.
Right.
I love that movie. She's very impactful to that movie. It's a very close decision, but the wind blew me just a little bit over to Coy.
I think the Loot Crate Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox connection.
Exactly.
He's in the box.
Yeah, that's right. A flux capacitor.
Joe, what was our poll result on that? I can hear people yelling on Twitter already.
Twitter hates childhood classics and actual dogs today. They went with Caesar in a landslide, 58%.
I love our Twitter poll users, but most of the time the Twitter poll is what's the most recent movie and how can I vote for that? Yeah.
Homeward Bound. I'd be surprised if most people have seen that movie.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a little bit lost in the film and the time.
Like so much of my childhood.
I remember it. I remember seeing it. But
all right.
I haven't thought about it since I saw it back then.
Round 4.
I should have used Benji.
Yeah. He talk?
I'm only picking obscure movies to win any of these rounds.
I
picked Sing Street, Homeward Bound, and Hellboy 2.
Yeah.
You're a snob, Dan
I'm
Murrell. You're a snob.
Apparently. Round 4, Donut Gleason, which is a fantastic name.
Great name.
Donut Gleason sent us a really fun question. Not really apropos of anything. We just thought this was a really cool, fun Twitter question. I want you guys to pitch a movie, and the protagonists in the movie are famous sidekicks from other movies. So he takes somebody as a sidekick in another movie, team them up with one or more sidekicks from another movie. They have their own adventure now. What is that movie? I want you to pitch me that movie. It just seems like a fun change of pace question here on Movie Fights. Coy, I'm going to start with you. What's your movie?
My movie is set within a distant corner that we have not yet seen of the DC universe, wherein Robin, Tim Drake, has been Robin for a few months, and through flashbacks we see him become Robin, and it's more of a rags to riches story in those flashbacks, but what we find out through the second act is that Batman has gone missing, and we then see him have to recruit other sidekicks to form a ragtag group of Teen Titans to hunt down the regular heroes and where they've gone. This is set in the tone of The Goonies. This is set in the tone of Kings of Summer, which is really underrated and needs to be seen by a lot of people. This is a movie wherein superheroes are gathering together to find their mentors powers and learning what it means to be a man or what it means to be a woman, to grow, to have that growth from child to adult in the superhero genre, which we haven't really quite seen. We've seen touches of it, but we haven't really had a Goonies yet. We haven't really had the sidekick story be put to the front. And I think that using Robin, a character that the world knows, that identifies with, that already has some inkling of it as the leader, really gives us an opportunity to show basically your Superboy, if we want to use that line. If you want to do Cyborg, if you want to have Raven, if you want to have Beast Boy, the way to do it is with this character we can identify with. He recruits them, and then these are all characters that know what it feels like to feel like a freak. These are characters that know what it feels like to not be wanted, and what is adolescence, and what is being a sidekick if not feeling not wanted and not good enough. So throughout the course of the movie, they become their own heroes, they become their own team, they become the Teen Titans, and that allows not only DC to show its light side, but it gives us the two parallel universes in the one universe, a la Marvel's Netflix and their MCU. MCU is light, Netflix is dark. This would be the light side of DC, which is what I think they need to make their universe work, and I think this would allow their universe to expand, and I think the sidekick is the best route to do it because they're untested characters that wouldn't get their own movie their own way.
That is the sweatiest comic book story pitch I've ever heard.
I have a lot of questions about your elements.
All right,
there.
well, JTE, the time for questions will come. What is your sidekick movie, JTE?
All right, I'm taking two of the most beloved sidekicks from my childhood. I am going with Data from Goonies. You were just mentioning Goonies.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to team him up with Short Round from Temple of Doom.
Are they twins?
Oh, you're going to hear this story.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want the whole pitch right now, right off the top?
Give me the bullet points.
I'll give you the bullet points. It is a Goonies Indiana Jones adventure melded together into one film that includes not only some of your favorite characters of all time with cameos, but also time travel in another adventure with two of the most adventurous, yet sometimes opposite kids.
So, it's the same actor, right?
It's the same actor.
So
We're
he's
gonna
playing both parts.
Parent Trap it.
Parrot trapping it.
Yep.
And is he current day playing them, or are you recasting?
I'm pitching this like it was made then.
Okay.
Back in the 80s.
So this is your 80s Data and your 80s
he did
Short
Goonies,
Round.
and he's signing up
great.
for this one.
I just want to make sure. I want to get it all. If it's an adult, so it's them in the 80s, that era. Great.
Got it.
John, what
It's
is
like
your
Van Damme, only it's
double impact? Double impact, right?
Double little impact.
All right, mine is
impact.
Jar Jar Binks and Salacious Crumb. Let's do this, and it's literally like taking two of the most lamest sidekicks. You know, Salacious Crumb is Jabba's sidekick. Jar Jar Binks is nobody wants him. He's the character that ruined the franchise of Star Wars for a long time, and basically trying the best way to make a buddy cop film by like having Jar Jar go to the dark side. He becomes a Sith, and he teams up with Salacious because Salacious is like he's like Jabba's right hand man. He gets a lot of things done. He can like make some business calls and stuff, and he's out to take out the two most boring parts of the entire everything Star Wars ever related is the banking guild and the Trade Federation. I wish I could take all that shit back from when I remember seeing the opening crawl of the Phantom Menace and almost passing out from the yellow text of and then the Trade Federation gaba gaba, banking guild gaba gaba, trade talks have fallen apart gaba gaba baba gaba, and it's like, look, man, that shit has to blow up, and it's got to blow up hard. And the only person who can do it is a Sith named Jar Jar and his effed up friend Salacious Crumb, who's also a tiny Sith, like rocking those weird red lightsabers.
Oh, so they're both Siths.
Yeah.
Okay, both Siths.
He gets Salacious wasn't. He's like more like an apprentice to Jar Jar. So,
right. Oh, okay. So Jar Jar is the Palpatine of the story, and Salacious Crumb is your
goes
Darth
full
Maul.
evil.
As it
He
were.
still talks. Misa Sith now. He still talks the same dumb way, but he's super dark and dangerous.
And they're wiping out the Trade
The
Federation.
Nemodians, all those horrible racial stereotypes that Lucas crammed in there are fucking going down. Sorry, man.
There you go. All right. So those are three distinct pitches.
Yeah. Can I attack
Have
both
at
of
it.
them?
Have at it, gentlemen.
First of all, I'll start here. Which Robin are we talking?
Tim Drake.
Are we talking Chris O'Donnell?
No,
are we talking
that's
Burt Ward?
Dick Grayson.
Well,
They're both Dick Grayson.
which
Tim
movie?
Drake is a comic character that
You have to
founds the
take.
Teen
You have to
Titans.
take a movie character.
He has the right. If he would like to cast his own Robin, he can cast his
you
own
don't have
Robin.
to take actual movie characters.
Well, Robin
Sidekicks.
is a movie sidekick.
Okay.
He can recast if he so desires.
So who you cast?
I would not want to have either of those. I'd want to have, if we're using time travel, I'd want to have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, as they smartly used in the Nolan universe, when he was in the 10 Things I Hate About You era. That Tim Drake would be fantastic. Or I would cast, who is the right age now? I would actually cast the kid from Kings of Summer, the main guy, because the idea of him rallying up a bunch of sidekicks that don't feel like they belong in the woods and forming the super team that rescues their heroes is a movie movie I'd love to see in that side of DC that need to happen.
I just don't want to see a movie without Batman if Robin's in it. The whole time I'm watching, I'm thinking, where's Batman? Maybe
That's what
Batman
they're going
will make
to.
a cameo.
In the third act, they get to Batman. They're
You're
rescuing
gonna
Batman.
watch that in about 4 years. It's called Titans.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
Cyborg, it's the Teen Titans.
So who's
Never been
You're about
interested
to see
in
that without Superman in Justice League.
whose
Never been
sidekicks
interested
are
in
your
that.
other characters? Like,
that's-
because it's other sidekicks.
Superboy has been a sidekick of Superman.
Okay.
I
What
have
movie has he been in, though?
Superboy.
Well, that's fine. I mean, he doesn't have to be JT. Don't worry.
I got you.
Don't play the rules, man. Here, I got you.
Well, and then all of those characters are sidekicks within the Teen Titans universe to Nightwing or Robin, depending on all those characters, like Cyborg and all the ones I listed, Beast Boy. Those are all just side tier characters too. So he literally gathers a team of sidekicks that aren't respected as their own heroes and forms a new team, which just happens to exist in the comics.
I'm not interested in any of those characters. Like, if I'm going to take two sidekicks that are beloved, that are, been known, I want somebody that I'm interested in that would be fun pairing together. All these characters, I'm sure they're great in the comics, but because I'm not a comic reader, I have no idea who they are.
But you know who Robin is, and that's your focal point.
Yeah, and Robin to me is always like the kind of lame sidekick to Batman. I've never seen a good Robin in a movie before.
This is the time.
He's
literally a
It's about
gymnast that
time.
did that.
Yeah.
He's a gymnast that figures out who Batman is by thinking. He's someone who actually figures out Bruce Wayne's identity
like
by
Joseph
figuring it out.
Gordon-Levitt.
Exactly.
Figured out just by talking to.
that
For
one
some
time-
reason, he saw something.
Yeah, we're gonna have a much better time.
Yeah.
So that character, I'd rather see that than see
Yeah.
two obscure '80s characters. Not that obscure, to be fair. Two characters that I didn't really invest in the first place as their own thing. They're not enough fleshed out to really go anywhere in an adventure, and I don't need
Let
that.
me
in my
let me
life.
paint you a picture here. of
yeah,
what
paint me a
would be.
picture. Let me see. What was it
Okay.
called? Double Little Impact.
Double Impact. That's not the title.
Okay.
That's the working
Okay,
title.
well, hey,
That's
okay.
the working title.
Working title is Double Little
Double
So
Impact.
my movie opens up like any great Indiana Jones movie, where Indiana Jones is at the end of his last adventure. You always jump in right when you're like at the very end of his last adventure.
Right.
But instead you're with the Goonies. You're with the whole Goonies crew and Data is there. You're coming into this big action scene. They're going down like a ship. There's a thing crashing. It might even be the ending of the first movie. Then Data goes home. He goes to his family. He takes off his contraptions because he's a technical genius. And his family's like, all right, we're going to go visit your grandfather. He's in a retirement home. He goes to visit his grandfather. His grandfather is always told him these stories about when he used to work for Dr. Jones and how he had these amazing adventures. And it rubbed off on Data because that's why Data likes going on these adventures now with the Goonies.
Right.
So he's talking to his grandfather. His grandfather's showing these old school pictures, some from Temple of Doom, some new pictures that we haven't even seen some adventures with these two characters. And he goes, what was it like working with Dr. Jones? There's one thing you regret now that you're, older and all this. He goes, there was one thing that me and him were trying to find that we were never able to find. We had all these maps, but Indiana Jones, his father died and had to go off. We weren't able to find it.
So when does he team up with
This is the very first scene in the movie.
Let's get the book on tape version.
So Data takes all these old documents that his father had, and it turns out the thing they were trying to find was this hourglass called the Sands of Time. So he takes these and he goes off. The Goonies they're all moved away because they got their new houses and stuff.
Yeah.
And he goes off and tries to find them himself, and he finds the actual artifact, and he somehow is reading the description wrong on the map, and it sends him back to the 1940s, and he meets his grandfather, who is at that time is Short Run, who looks
Short Round.
who looks just like him, and they go on this adventure of trying to actually get back to the. It's basically
Back to the future?
It's literally.
Can I just stop this part of the story right now?
That Luke
I really
response
don't
was
want to
really
I
just
don't want to
Luke
hear
right
any more of it.
It's a horribly awesome story. Here's the thing I love about it is you got this one kid who is all about technology, and he has this vest, and you have this old school Short Round who's all about just Indiana Jones style, punching, kicking, whips, and he's an adventurer. And together they use their different skills to go on adventure, very much in the vein of Indiana Jones and Goonies. And they're in the middle. There's a little Indiana Jones cameo.
I'm giving DC
Okay.
their Spider-Man. You're giving us an '80s.
I'm giving you a great. If this movie
So-
came out in the '80s, Goonies and Indiana Jones in one movie,
I'd rather watch Double Impact 40 times than see
No,
this.
You're dealing
Double
with
tiny
two
impact.
a reviled Jar Jar Binks,
Oh,
especially.
yeah, let's
Now,
get into
how
this.
is this movie going to win over people that are like, I will never go see Jar Jar Binks in
This
another
is an
movie?
apology movie to all the people who had to sit through the entire trilogy of those prequels. And
Okay.
I think that in this world that would make this film, they're like, look, we want to give you something that would give you some kind of satisfaction, and that would be to see all of the dumb characters that they introduced in the prequels just blown up, destroyed in the most violent ways, and take one of the worst characters ever introduced, Jar Jar Binks, make him a weird, crazy Sith badass, and actually make a weird buddy cop movie so bizarre and strange that you actually actually like Jar Jar by the end of the movie.
Oh, no way.
That could happen.
The dialogue alone in that movie will keep me from buying a ticket.
It would be so fantastic. Misa Crumb, come on, let's go kick some ass.
That sounds horrible.
Coy, what are your takes on these two?
In my opinion, mine is the only movie that has the option to exist in because Teen Titans has a giant market. It's had 3 TV shows that have done very well. It's got an animated following. It's got a comic following. It is the answer to what Marvel is doing that allows DC to keep their movies canon that have already existed. It allows Man of Steel to exist and Justice League to exist on a separate side and then give us the light side of DC that exists and does well. CW is great and their shows are great. The Teen Titans show is great. This allows a movie version of those characters. It gives DC their Spider-Man. It gives us a Robin that we deserve, and it allows us to see a coming-of-age movie with sidekicks, and it allows us to have a new generation of people to appreciate what it feels like to be wanted and to have these powers and to grow up, and that's what this movie's about.
JTE, what are your closing
That
thoughts?
sounds like a great DC animated movie, which I'm sure would be great to pick up on iTunes sometimes, but I don't know if I need to see that on the big screen. I don't need to see all these characters I don't know that I'm not really interested in.
You didn't used to know Iron Man?
I knew Iron Man before Iron Man.
That's good.
Oh,
A lot of
come
people
on.
didn't. A lot of
I
people
understand a lot of people
didn't.
did. But I'm just saying, like, to me, yours just sounds like anything. Like you said, we're probably going to get that sometime. Because it's just part of the DC machine that's trying to turn out this franchise and build this world. My movie is actually a love letter to the movies that both characters are from. Goonies, Indiana Jones. A lot of people say Goonies is the kids' version of Indiana Jones. So why not put that in one movie together with 2 of the most likable characters? And not only are they played by the same actor, but I love the fact that one person's all about technology and inventions. The other one is an old school 1940s swashbuckler.
Mine's in the same
And
genre,
they
but it's
team up.
characters you care about. And in my case, characters I care about. This is the same. This is the Goonies.
I
but
think
with
yours
superheroes.
Yours is way too sweaty. Yours is just stupid.
No,
Mine is at least in the vein of Robot Chicken. Like I'm like saying, look, it's an entertaining take. It's an entertaining take on some stupid
But you
characters.
think that could go longer than a short?
Well, no, it would be a feature film, just like other comedy buddy films. This is a straight up comedy buddy film. Like, let me just get it straight. It's a comedy, and it would be really funny to see Jar Jar Binks and Salacious Crumb destroy the Nemodians, blowing up all the shitty things like the Banking Guild and the Trade Federation, watching all those boring things get blown up in the stupidest way possible by bumbling Sith Lords.
I see it as a bad robot
The
sketch.
audience for that is so niche. Like,
And I see
who
the robot
half
sketch.
the people
Dude.
don't care about the
They care more than
prequels.
Short Round.
They
You
don't-
can't even say the name right. It's Short Round,
Short
not Short
Round.
Run.
Well,
Get it right if you're going to have a
Your
movie about
your
them.
movie should be a short run because it sounds like it would be 10 minutes about
I
the
think
most I
people
can watch of
remember
it.
these characters more
Jar
than
Jar
either of these
Binks. I don't
characters
care
in
if
a
you
positive
make.
light.
I don't care if you make Jar Jar Binks a Sith Lord.
Yes,
That is not going to make
time
him cool.
travel with
People love
Short
Robin more
Run
than Short
and
Round or Jar Jar.
Data.
Robin has more
Sounds
heart than either.
amazing. It's 80s.
There we go.
I had to let that go to its natural progression.
It's 80s.
It's
80s.
man. 80s. You get away
There are
with way
fatal
more.
flaws in all these arguments,
yes.
so I need a minute to process. Joe, what's any corrections? What's going on in the Twitterverse?
So much to correct with
So
this
much.
nonsense. Nothing really to correct here. I think people are interested in Star Wars things, so I will correct that statement. There's a lot of love for the movie Sky High, which is very similar to Coy's premise.
Sky is great.
Let's
Kurt
see
Russell.
here.
Yeah.
Hope Lizzie Lapp. That also would have been my argument for underrated superhero movie. Hope Lappin on Twitter pitched a movie that includes Hermione, Johnny from Karate Kid, and Cameron from Ferris Bueller. I would like to see that movie.
Nice. Good movie.
We've got Garth and Silent Bob. And my favorite Twitter suggestion, Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park and Zeus from Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Go Blue Jackson.
Go,
Watch
yeah.
that.
All movie sidekicks.
Unfortunately, I can't choose any of those. I am. All right, so, gentlemen, this is very difficult. I feel like Coy. I'm not sold that your characters are sidekicks. They sound like lesser known characters more than sidekicks.
Robin's the sidekick.
Robin is the sidekick. I agree, and it sounds like something we might get anyway. JTE. I see where you're
That's
coming from on
inventive.
yours, but it's Back to the Future.
You choosing Jar Jar?
I'm not. No.
Okay, sorry.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
Or I won't choose you.
I won't. I'm not.
I can
You're the
be
best.
vindictive.
You're the best.
But I'm just not sure. It sounds so convoluted and complex, and I don't know what the Goonies and Short Round, and I'm not totally sold on that. Jar Jar and Salacious Crumb. That is a difficult sell. It sounds like a prequel apology tour. I think it sounds very mean.
It's Robot Chicken. It's a comedy.
I can't really throw my support behind any one of these full-heartedly. So, given my options, I'm going to side with Coy. It sounds like the most viable choice. It sounds like the one that would be the most sellable, marketable movie that people would actually want to see. JT, I think yours is very niche. John, I just don't think anybody would go see Jar Jar. You tried to sell it, and it was a good angle, but I just feel like prequels, people are just tired of them, and it might be time to let the prequels fade
Went full
away.
sweaty. Had to go full sweaty.
Full sweaty. So, moving on to the final round, round 5. The BFG opened last week, believe it or not. You might have missed it because it didn't do so well. That hurts. Steven Spielberg is my personal favorite filmmaker, but every filmmaker's got some stinkers on their record. So Ryan Richards at Regan Smash 1987. This is a Movie Fights rematch. Asked us, what is Steven Spielberg's worst movie? Now I am going to qualify this with the fact that all 3 of you automatically picked, and not wrongly, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. We are disqualifying that one for for the sake of a good fight, a good strong fight. Crystal Skull is out the window. So we want to know, what is Steven Spielberg's worst movie? And JTE, we're going to start with you.
I'm going to start with a film that I recently rewatched 2 weeks ago because I had nostalgia. I remember liking this movie a little bit as a kid, and it's been so long since I saw it. I said, it can't be as bad as some people have told me it is.
We talked about this.
And it is Hook.
Wow.
Hook is not a good movie. Now, let's put this on standard. Steven Spielberg is a great filmmaker. I think it's very hard for him to make a full-out dud, okay? So I'm going to throw that right away out there. Even his worst films, which I've looked through, have some things that are good about it. But for me, Hook failed at what Spielberg usually does best, which is making a magical, entertaining, movie with great set pieces and like great scenes, whether it be action or just emotion. Rewatching Hook, I didn't get any of that. Mm-hmm. I felt like it was just a huge misstep for somebody who's usually great at doing this kind of thing. So for me, that's why it's the worst Spielberg film, because it's really a very Spielberg-y film when it comes down to its elements.
There you go. Hook, a controversial pick, I would imagine, with a lot of people.
Oh, there's some supporters out there. I'll give you that.
John, what is your choice for the worst Steven Spielberg movie?
Yeah, Hook is definitely up there as far as not a great Steven Spielberg film. And I know a lot of people who grew up watching that as little kids, just like Batman and Robin. They grew up watching it when they were 5, so it holds a special place of nostalgia and magic. Whereas if you saw it when you're like 13 or 14, you realize it was not that good of a film. And then you see it again like recently. But one that you cannot be denied as one of the worst Steven Spielberg films is 1941. Now that's unwatchable. Hook at least is watchable, where you can watch it from beginning to the middle to the end and get through it. And yeah, definitely there's some sequences in it that don't stand up to the test of time. Also, the story's weird, and he's also arguing about these kids, I have to transform into this guy again. It ultimately is a betrayal of what Peter Pan is. 1941, Steven Spielberg was trying to make a comedy film, and it fell flat in almost every possible way, even though it had the biggest stars in it. It had Dan Aykroyd, it had John Belushi. It was packed to the gills. It was like an airplane where you had all these different cameos, all these different people. Nothing was funny. Everything was awkward and strange. Sort of like Crystal Skull, it had this kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I gave up while I was making it. So we're just kind of ghost directing and executing these scenes. He might have had a sandwich, or he might have been crying in a corner. Whatever he was doing, he wasn't making this film, because then it was put together and just quickly released. It was a gigantic bomb. It was a critical failure, and it doesn't stand up. Didn't stand up then, doesn't stand up now. It is his worst film, period.
Wow. Harsh words for 1941. Coy, what is your pick for the worst Steven Spielberg movie?
I think this film, which had every opportunity to succeed and every right to succeed, considering its cast, considering when it came out, and considering its source material, is War of the Worlds. There is no excuse for War of the Worlds to not be a better film. There's no reason that Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg making an action sci-fi film together. Minority Report's brilliant. Should not have been what this turned into. When you remember War of the Worlds, you remember that Tom Cruise is in it, red goo, tripods, but that was a story that was so good that literally people thought the world was being invaded by aliens when it was a radio play. When you make something that well written that people are terrified for their lives, and then you translate it through Spielberg and Tom Cruise, and it comes out as anything less than amazing, you have failed as a filmmaker. When I think back on Tom Cruise's career and the fact that one of, I think, his worst films is a Spielberg film, that doesn't compute to me. This film is so bad that it actually betrays my perspective of Spielberg as a filmmaker, because so much must have gone wrong to get it to this level, because there's so much talent involved that had so much going for it. And I mean, even Justin Chatwin's in there as a kid. Like, there's every little piece is so right. How did it go so wrong? So it's clearly a failure from the director's part, because the script was good. I mean, the story was good. The script, whatever happened, the actors are good. How did this movie exist? There's no right for this film to be as bad as it is. It's his worst film.
Wow. Guys, Three very
wanna talk
different
about the worlds?
choices.
Let me
Fight it
start
out.
with the War of the
Go
Worlds.
ahead.
I'll argue with you. It's not one of his worst films. It definitely has
Definitely not.
incredible set pieces. It has an amazing opening sequence. Everything from the aliens showing up and vaporizing people, just turning them into powder as Cruise is running. There's a lot of tension that's built up. You don't know where the aliens are coming from. Even if you're familiar, like I was, with all the original, I've listened to the radio play. I've seen like the 1950s version with the weird, like saucer green things and little 3-pronged dude, dies of the flu. So you kind of know where the movie's going, or it's a remake. We don't know how it's going to go. I actually liked the tension that, oh my God, they might lose, where they're hiding out in that house and they finally get picked up, and there's definitely there's parts of the movie that are just don't make sense, especially when they all run over that hill. Like there's like golden light coming from the hill.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just certain things, and they all show up at the end, and some of these homes aren't destroyed and whatnot. But I couldn't say that it's a worse Spielberg film. They're definitely far worse. Like 1941, which I definitely, at least my opinion, is the worst film. There's other ones that aren't up to the caliber of, like, you look at all of the films he made. So many are just incredible. Oscar-winning films.
Brilliant.
You have Jaws. We don't have to go through the list of like 40 or so films, but like I can't say that that's the worst one.
Coy, what are your thoughts on Hook?
With Hook, I find that it was made for its audience, and its audience is who enjoys it. As a filmmaker making a children's movie, I think the viewer affects how you make the film. I think Spielberg making a movie for kids, it nailed that, and I enjoy Hook for being what it was. I will always remember Rufio. I will always remember the food fight. I will always remember the visuals that trippy acid world created, and I still to this day reference Rufio and the acid world. I still to this day remember Julia Roberts as Tinkerbell, and Robin Williams improving those lines or having them written. Like, he is always a Peter Pan to me because of Hook. And
he was dipped in Nair. Do you know that? Just to get rid of all that incredible ape hair.
So when I think back on Hook, and even when I rewatch Hook, I must have enough nostalgia, because I don't consider it one of his worst films. Because even when I rewatched it 2 years ago, I enjoyed it. I rewatched it actually a few years back when Robin Williams died, and I was just as happy then because it was my childhood. And maybe that's closed-minded, but I think it's a great representation of Spielberg doing a kids movie.
Ooh, no. Here's the deal. First of all, War of the Worlds, unlike Hook, has great set pieces. There's moments where I can just get lost in the mastery of the filmmaking. The scene where the van is going down the street and the camera's going in and out, in and out. The scene where the people are actually like zombies are going across the van. There's the ferry scene where just moments of pure awe in that movie. Now, I agree with you. It could have been a better movie. It's not perfect, but I would put it in the middle of the Spielberg kind of like anthology, just nowhere near the bottom for me.
What about 1941?
Yeah, how are you going to argue me?
1941 is not as horrible as you're saying.
I've laughed a few times in 1941.
I thought that movie was clever. And first of all, it's Spielberg doing something different. There's not another movie
bad
like
movie.
No, there's
Something
not.
different.
There's some other bad movies. There's not another movie where he tried something new. My thing is, Hook is what he's supposed to be great at. You're saying it's good for kids. What Spielberg does, he makes movies that kids love and adults love.
It was also good for me. I'm saying it was good for me too.
I believe this probably. I think Hook is the worst rated out of these three films on Rotten Tomatoes. And for a reason, double check
that. Will not be the decisive factor. Let's fact check that.
Fact check that. What I'm saying is, like, with your movie, okay, he did something different, and I do think there's some great jokes in that movie. The beginning with the submarine that makes it almost like a parody of Jaws, I thought was really funny and clever. And John Belushi, I mean, say what you will, it might not be the funniest movie, but that guy brings enough comedy to some of the scenes that makes it work for me. We didn't get enough John Belushi movies, so
Dustin Hoffman brings an amazing,
I love his Hook.
Dustin Hoffman is, I'm totally going to agree with you. Dustin Hoffman is one of the better things in the movie, but his story arc is kind of weak too. He has this whole thing where he's trying to, like, I'm not even 100% sure what he's trying to do with Robin Williams' son. He's just trying to, like, get me part of his pirate crew.
If you take a step back and look at the three films objectively, I think the goal of 1941 is to make you laugh, and I think at times it does that. If you look at Hook objectively, I think the goal is to entertain you and entertain your kids and be an adventure film. If you look at my film, it's supposed to suspend disbelief, make you feel fear, and it's supposed to have fear. It's supposed to have a resolution where you don't feel cheated, because that's what action movies are for. I felt cheated when everyone was just Humphrey Dory, so it failed its objective as a film-going experience.
Had some awe and some great filmmaking. You go back and watch some of the effects in Hook; they do not hold up. Julia
That's
Roberts.
Not its fault. It's the time it was made. I look at this 10 years from now. You're not going to watch World War.
There's stuff happening practical effects wise in 1941 that holds up better than what's.
I agree with that.
But all of the practical effects are, they're cool as far as a roller, the weird Ferris wheeler rolling along, but it all adds up to nothing. What I'm saying is 1941 is an empty exercise in trying to make a comedy, and it's not funny. You guys might have laughed at one or two scenes because you might have been. I don't think you actually saw the film because it's hard to get through. So you might have seen a clip of John Belushi doing something funny and remember that, like, he was in that plane doing something, pretending to smoke a cigar. That's not a movie. That's a scene. If you sit through this movie and don't fall asleep or get angry and throw something, I'd be shocked and
That's
amazed.
how I felt about War of the Worlds. It felt insulting to me. When I've never gotten through War of the Worlds a second time. I love Hook.
Let's bring this home. Coy, and what I need to hear from all of you, not just why these are bad movies, just to close it out. Why is this the worst of all of the other movies? Why is War of the Worlds? Why is Hook? Why is 1941 the worst?
Mine is the worst because it had the most to lose. Mine is the worst because the bar was set the highest because the original was so well-founded. The cast is so much better than anything it delivered, and because it had the farthest to fall and it fell the farthest. If the other two are unwatchable to them, that's on them for not wanting to rewatch it, but this one had higher stakes because this is exactly his wheelhouse. It had a great foundation. It had a great set of actors, and then it still failed. So it fell even farther than a movie that was set in something, trying to try something new, like you said. He tried to try something new. It fell this much. If he tried to make a kids movie that doesn't hold up to adults, it fell this much because kids still get it. My movie failed in every level, and it had a much harder time getting through the experience.
JT.
I disagree with yours holding up. I think I watched yours not too long ago, and the effects and some of the action sequences and the filmmaking at hand is still spectacular. My movie, I think, is the worst movie of Spielberg because it is the one that is most tailor-made for him to make a great movie. It is a kid's film. It is supposed to be an adult film. It's supposed to have action, adventure. It's supposed to have some sort of... There's not one scene I could talk to you about right now in Hook where I was like, that is classic Spielberg right there. That is an enthralling scene. All I ever did was roll my eyes and cringe because I'm like, how could somebody who's made these kind of movies his whole career miss not bad but miserably? The characters are one note. He made me not like Robin Williams for about an hour and a half. I thought that was impossible. I couldn't stand his character. And then you're supposed to... and then when he turns to Peter Pan, it didn't work for me. It was like this weirdo just flying around.
So it's the worst because
it was tailor-made. It was tailor-made for him to knock it out of the park, and he failed on every level.
Okay,
I have to fully disagree with your opinion on Hook. I mean, it's Spielberg taking something that he was dealing with as a father at that time and being like, hey, I'm moving away from all these children's tales. That stuff isn't real to anymore. And then being forced to deal with it and go back into his childhood and become that kid again. That's what the film is all about. It's a deeper film. It's deeper than Peter Pan, just like a lot of films like Neverland. That's why it's Hook, but it's also there's so many other layers that are going on in that film. That's why it's not one of the worst films. Some people love it, some people hate it, but that's why it's not one of the worst. War of the Worlds, that's also not why it's one of the worst. He'd already had like 30 or 40 incredible films. He'd already won an Oscar. He'd proven everything he had to prove. He was making a genre picture, another film with Tom Cruise. He'd already done a film with Tom Cruise. This one might not have been his best film. It had a lot of good points. It had some bad points, but it actually was, a lot of people liked it. It made a lot of money. 1941, he had done Jaws. He had done Close Encounters. He was the wonder kind kid. He was like unstoppable. It was like, whatever this guy touches, it turns into gold. Oh my God, he took a giant crap making 1941, box office failure, critical failure. He's embarrassed by it. You can ask him.
Ooh, passion as I would expect in round 5. Joe, before I give my ruling, what's Twitter saying? Anything to correct?
Let's see here. Funny story. War of the Worlds, 74% on Rotten Tomatoes. 1941, 32% on Rotten Tomatoes. Hook, 30% on Rotten Tomatoes.
There you go.
JTE was correct. However, JTE, you might need to hire protection. The internet is very mad at you for saying bad things
Watch
about
it
Hook.
again, people.
There's been a
again.
massive spike in thud butt gifs.
Yeah, I would imagine.
We've got a lot of hate for the Lost World, and a lot of people chiming in on with AI, which I don't agree with.
That's
not bad.
divisive.
It's divisive.
Randall Sands says Warhorse. It seemed like Spielberg was trying to imitate himself.
That was a close one.
And
for me.
Santoro PP agrees and says Warhorse is his most obnoxious movie.
So here's where I fall, you guys. Coy, I feel like you were making a very strong case as to why War of the Worlds failed to live up to its potential, and I think that's a great argument to have. JTE, I think you were making a very strong case as to why Hook does not hold up anymore, why it was a beloved film, but why in the light of day it does not hold up. But the thing that kind of put the scales in my favor, and I think everyone had an opportunity, was you guys mounted passionate defenses of War of the Worlds. There were passionate defenses for Hook. I heard absolutely no defenses whatsoever for 1941. I heard nobody defending why it wasn't the worst. I felt like you all made cases as to why your movie doesn't hold up. I think John made a better case, number one, as to why his movie is worse just purely as a cinematic experience, and the fact that nobody really mounted a great defense against why it was the worst. That means that I'm going to give that point to Schnepp. So at the end of round 5, that means that Coy and John, you are tied with 2 points apiece. You'll be moving on to the speed round. JTE.
Yeah, I'm shocked. I gotta be honest, I'm shocked.
JTE, listen, maybe if the beard was here, it'd be different. So. But the beard is on vacation.
On paper, I thought I had it.
On paper, but hey, this
that's
is reality.
The way it goes.
So, guys, we are going to move on to the speed round. But before we do that, I would like to thank once again our fine sponsors at Loot Crate. Get yourself some awesome gear and support this podcast in the process. Click the annotation to visit lootcrate.com/moviefights. Sign up, and we will help you save 10% on a new subscription by using the code MovieFights. And you have until July 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to subscribe and receive the futuristic crate, which is so mind-blowingly in the future that you're just going to have to get it to find out what's in it. Amazing items from Rick and Morty, Mega Man, Futurama, Star Trek The Next Generation. Do you need anything else? Those are all amazing things.
Sounds amazing.
So thank you, Loot Crate, for sponsoring us. That's lootcrate.com/moviefights. 10% off the new subscription if you use the code MovieFights. All right, gentlemen. John, Coy, it is tied up 2-2. That means this is a best of 5 here in the speed round. I know you've both been on the show, but just if there's anyone watching that doesn't know how the speed round works, I will give you a question. If you both answer the question with the same answer, whoever said it first will get to fight for that answer. The other person will have to pick a second answer. You will each get 20 seconds to defend your choice. You will then get a 10-second rebuttal. Any questions? All right, guys. So, as always, and this is so much fun, I love to do this, it is our bargain bin pick. In just a moment, right here on the screen, you are going to see 2 movies. Your job is to tell us if these 2 movies were on the bargain bin, which one would you buy? So don't put it up just yet. At Trying to Do Art submitted this to us on Twitter, and let's put up our bargain bin pick.
Space Jam.
So Coy, I believe, unless John, you have any objections, you have Space Jam. John, you will take Air Bud.
Sure.
Coy, since you answered first, you will argue first. 20 seconds begins when you begin talking.
Space Jam is one of the few sports movies that still holds up for both children and adults. It is a film that actually translated between live action and cartoon before it was really an option and really became like what it is today. I think it is, along with Who Framed Roger Rabbit, one of the best animated crossover with children's movies, and it has Bill Murray, and you really can't top a Bill Murray movie with Michael Jordan. It is a fun movie. It is adventurous. It has aliens.
There we go. 20 seconds. Sorry, for those at home, I was pointing at Joe. I was like, is he timing? But Joe's doing the old school technique. I love it. You good, Joe? You need a stopwatch?
Brother, I got you.
Joe's got me. All right.
Like this.
John, 20 seconds. Air Bud.
In honor of The Secret Life of Pets, let me pick an incredible film called Air Bud, where we basically have a dog playing basketball with Michael Jordan and some of the other amazing greats. That didn't really happen, but it's a pretty fantastic film. It's heartwarming. It spawned like 13 sequels. I think Space Jam never had a sequel. They're still trying to make one. It's a good film. I can't say more than that.
Coy, 10-second rebuttal.
The reason Space Jam hasn't gotten a sequel is they haven't thought of a reason to have a sequel because it's so good, and they're actually working on it again because people love it so much. It is a beloved film that didn't need to have 13 sequels. If it gets one, good, but...
John?
Yeah, Air Bud is also one of those films that's like rewatchable because it's like some people think it's really corny and funny so they can watch it. Space Jam is just not watchable.
There you go.
I hate Space Jam.
JTE, what do you think?
I'm gonna have to give the edge to Coy on this one. I just heard some more facts about why it's a decent movie.
All right, Joe, where are you leaning?
I like that franchise argument for Air Bud from Schnepp, so I'm gonna go Schnepp.
Oh wow! All right, one for Coy, one for Schnepp. The franchise argument is very strong. That is a very strong argument, but I think Coy gave me a few more reasons why Space Jam is the better movie in and of itself, so I'm going to side with Coy. Coy, you get the first point of the speed round. You guys, you're a couple comic book experts. You know all about comic books. So this is something that I've seen asked a lot. Which version is more improved? The Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition or the Watchmen Director's Cut?
Watchmen Director's Cut.
John, you've got the Watchmen Director's Cut.
All right.
Coy, you will be fighting for the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. John, 20 seconds starts when you start talking.
Batman, the theatrical cut, was an incredible disappointment and horrible thing to sit through. The Ultimate Edition of that fixed a lot of problems, but ultimately it's still not that great of a film. Watchmen was a great movie. The director's cut just added a lot more elements back into it that he couldn't fit in, but Watchmen as an actual theatrical cut worked.
Coy.
Watchmen went from good to great. Batman v Superman went from unwatchable to watchable. I think the improvement of Batman v Superman is much larger because it filled in plot holes, it made us understand the characters, it gave us a lot more to watch, and I think that is why it needed to exist. I don't think the Watchmen cut needs to exist because both are watchable, whereas BVS is just not in one of his iterations, and I think that Watchmen was a shot-for-shot remake and everything.
John.
Watchmen was the truest form adaptation to any comic besides Sin City. It really followed everything to the core, even though Alan Moore wasn't credited. Batman v Superman was just a horrible script.
Coy.
Watchmen had less to gain from a new cut because it was already great. That BVS had to have that cut, and therefore its cut is a more important and superior cut because it had to exist in order to have it be approachable and watchable.
All right, those are very passionate arguments. Joe, where do you fall on this one?
You know, I never thought I'd say this because it's me saying something positive about Batman v Superman, but I appreciate the honesty of the argument of it went from to eh?
So you sided with Coy on that one?
Siding with Coy on that one.
JTE, what do you think?
This is tough. Schnepp made some really great points about theatrical being good and just fleshing out the story more. The question is, what was the better cut?
The question is, which is more improved?
Which is more improved? Just going by the arguments, I would have to go with Coy on that one.
I would side with you there. Coy, I think, made the article for why Batman v Superman was a more improved movie. Maybe not a better movie, but a more improved movie. So,
I would side with Coy as well.
I don't
know why I picked Watchmen because I like the film. I like Watchmen. Watchmen is oh, wait a minute. Wait, I actually liked Batman v Superman the Ultimate Edition. Guess I screwed myself.
You're one of the few people that convinced me to watch the Ultimate Edition, so I was like, oh.
I just put my foot in my mouth right there.
John, you have no margin for error here.
All right.
Coy is up 4-2. You're going to have to run the rest of these questions to win this episode of Movie Fights. So
How many
it's
other
not
questions
over yet.
are there?
3 more questions left.
All right.
I saw a new trailer for a movie featuring this actor this week. What is the best movie featuring Mel Gibson?
Lethal Weapon.
I would say Braveheart.
Lethal Weapon versus Braveheart. 2 great movies, 2 very different movies. Coy, I heard you first. You are first up. 20 seconds start when you start talking.
Lethal Weapon rejuvenated a genre that had long since died or was crippled. It invented an action comedy that was relevant. It spawned 3 sequels that weren't as good as the original, but still hold up. It created 4 films that are really watchable and fantastic, and it features Riggs, one of the best characters of all time, as played by Mel Gibson. It is fun, it is heartfelt, it cares, it has detail, it really invests in all of its characters, and the action holds up to this day.
Whew, that is a lot of information, Schnepp.
I can't talk that fast, but Mel Gibson directing Braveheart as well as acting in it is just an astonishing film to see. It's a spectacle. I believe it won an Oscar for something, and that's all I gotta say.
Okay. Coy.
I've always gone back to rewatchability versus Oscars, and I think critically it might have been better, but I think Lethal Weapon is truly a remarkable film because it created 4 good films. It's probably the best franchise of all time. Without the first one being as strong as it was, it couldn't have allowed that.
Micro Machines.
I know, right?
John.
Well, I mean, Braveheart actually started this whole kind of a franchise of having these these historical biopics and having the guy at the very end make a big rousing speech and have people run into battle.
Okay, JTE, I'm going to come to you first.
Oh, man. Listen, I want Braveheart to win this so bad. Even though I love Lethal Weapon. But Coy was just throwing facts out left and right and made some really good points. And he had a great response back to the criticals. So I got to give it to Coy.
Joe, what are you thinking over there?
Dan, Coy just said a lot of things.
He did. He did, indeed. All right, that's a no answer, I think, from
Again,
Joe.
that's a no answer from Joe.
John, I think you could have had the upper hand if you had broken out the best picture argument, if you had broken out a couple more things, but I didn't. You kind of tailed off a little bit on Braveheart. So while I don't necessarily personally agree with this, I think Coy, even though he had the most volume of information, also had the most persuasive argument. So I give the point to Coy. I give the point to Coy. That means that he wins.
All right.
Sweeps the speed round and wins today's episode of Movie Fights. Congratulations, Coy. Still undefeated here on Screen Junkies. We could have a contender here, folks.
Next to superhero movies, Lethal Weapon's my baby. So I literally was like, this is an opportunity to talk about my love for Lethal Weapon.
I love Lethal Weapon too. So
I
it's tough to...
tweeted that trailer today. I literally tweeted like, he's lost Murtaugh, he lost Lorna, Lethal Weapon 5, Riggs is too old for your shit. And
There
that
you
was
go.
my love of that, yeah.
Guys, I want to thank you. Before I give you a chance to plug whatever you'd like to plug, I do want to tease next week's fights because it's something that a lot of people have been asking for. You know, people say, why do you do so many superhero things? Why do you do so many comic book things? Why do you do so many of this? Well, it's because, that's what there's a lot of interest about that. That's certainly what a lot of people want to hear about. But we also hear you guys. Next week, sitting in this chair will be Alicia Malone. And it's going to be film fights. Next week is an all classic film fights episode. Nice. They're going to be talking, and nobody knows classic movies better than Alicia Malone. She'll be sitting here judging. We have a great panel lined up. They will be talking about some of the most classic topics in Hollywood history, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, all the kind of like old Hollywood stuff that doesn't usually, unfortunately, find a place here on the show. That's all you're going to get next week. Alicia Malone. I'm super excited to watch that episode.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be really fun and a fun thing to do while Andy's still on vacation. And then, of course, the next week, I also want to talk about Screen Junkies Central. You will be watching us live from San Diego. We'll be there during Comic-Con. And I want to take a second just to let you know that if you're a Screen Junkies Plus member, which if you're watching this on Thursday, if you're watching this live right now, you're all set. We're going to be emailing you all the details soon with instructions. And if you want to go and get your tickets, you're going to get a link. You're going to get the information on how to watch us. But if you want tickets and you are not a member of Screen Junkies Plus, you can either sign up, and we'd love to have you here as part of it, or you can register right now for free at screenjunkies.com/central. That way you can get the info about how you can join us in San Diego and also how you can watch us in San Diego, because we will be streaming everything live on screenjunkies.com, all of our programming. We're super excited. And we want to just give a quick thank you to ShowClicks. They have been incredible working with us. Their team created an amazing hub, and they've taken really good care of us to get our ticketing concerns taken care of and to get a system ready for getting everybody their tickets so that they can come join us in San Diego. So thank you, ShowClicks, and thank you to this amazing panel. Today's winner, Coy Jandreau, where can they find you, sir?
I co-host Marvel Movie News with Matt Key. You can find me at CoyJandreau on Twitter and Instagram, and I love talking to you guys because I learn every time, and you guys actually got me more into DC, so I really appreciate that, and go watch Lethal Weapon.
There you go. JTE, of course.
What's going on, guys? You can catch me here, engineering shows, and when I'm not doing that, I'm also Thursdays on Schmoes Know. Also, I started my own YouTube channel called JTE Movie Thinks, where I do reviews, trailer reviews, anything my geek mind comes up to, and you can see my Twitter down there. Follow me. I talk about movies a lot. I don't hate Hook that much.
You have to argue it, though, right?
I had to argue it,
I
guys.
think the tweets have already been sent. That might be a losing battle.
It's over.
Or like, kill him. He's
the Saturday tweets.
Jon
He's like,
Schnepp, as always, thank you, sir, for
fun, really fun doing the show. You guys can find me on Instagram and Twitter, just at Jon Schnepp. You can watch my film, my series, Collider Heroes. It's on every Wednesday, where we just talk about superhero stuff on the Collider Network. Definitely check out Film HQ on ComicConHQ.com. We're going to be having a lot of stuff at the San Diego Comic-Con, and that's all. I mean, definitely check out my film, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. Go to TDOSLWH.com, buy a digital copy, or you can rent it. Thanks.
There you go. Over on the couch for us, Joe Starr.
Hello, sir. You can find me on Twitter at JoeStar187 and in the Screen Junkies writer room waiting for an invitation to be on JTE Movie Thinks.
Oh, Dan Murrell, let me mention, I almost
yes.
forgot, tomorrow you're going to be fighting Mark Riley for the Schmodown belt.
That's right. If you're watching live right now on Screen Junkies Plus, tomorrow on Friday, I will be facing Mark Yodi Riley for the Schmodown Singles Trivia Championship belt. I want that belt. I want all the belts. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go check it out right now. It's already up. You can go see, did Riley defeat me? Did I win the day? Who knows? But check it out tomorrow. The Schmoes have been really hyping it up. I think it's going to be a great match. I can't wait to see if I'm able to pull it off.
Can you do one thing for me, Dan?
Yes.
Win. Rocky 2, everybody. Rocky 2. Adrian Honor Beth.
Thank you.
JTE also saw that one in the theater.
Yep, there
Yes.
you go. JTE has seen every movie since 1964 in the
Just
theater.
the Rockies. He goes back in time with his short round and just watches Rocky.
I wish I had time machine so I go back watch
The
all
sands
those.
of time.
The Sands of Time. You and Data and Short Round can go see Rocky
All
in the
the
theater. And not least of all, thank you for watching at home, watching our movie fights, whether you're watching us on Screen Junkies Plus or YouTube. We will be back next week with classic film fights with Alicia Malone. Cannot wait to see you then. Until then, bye-bye.
Every podcast we put on YouTube comes with this kick-ass graphic listing all the topics your favorite Screen Junkies podcasters are talking about. If you click the topics, you can skip around and choose your own podcast battle royale. Go ahead, try them all. If you haven't already, subscribe to Screen Junkies on YouTube to join us for future fights. Or if you prefer to listen on iTunes, click the logo to download an audio version.